On the internet right now, or social media, a lot of discussions being had about behaviorism versus cognition or cognitive learning. And I think I think it's very misleading, because it's all very complicated. It's not just that there's just this piece or just this piece or this or that, or you can't really pull it apart. There's so much more going on, and it's all working together to create, ideally, what we're doing is creating a horse who is emotionally happy and well adjusted. And that means and I've heard this argument before. For a long time, people have said, well, they'll just turn into robots if you're using operant conditioning. But you know what? We're using operant conditioning with traditional training. Traditional training, pressure and release, is under the realm of operant conditioning. But so is positive reinforcement, so is punishment. They're all under the operant conditioning. Operant conditioning basically being how they learn to operate and deal and live in their environment. A baby horse, when it's born, the moment it's born, operant conditioning starts working. They start figuring out, how do I get what I want? How do I avoid what we don't want? And so reinforcers are happening when they fall on their little nose and they're trying to get up to nurse, for they don't even know why yet. They're starting to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And that learning, it becomes a cognitive process. It also creates neural pathways, which make it easier to recall and perform that behavior again. So they're not always having to learn everything every second of every day. We're not having to do that. We kind of remember how to tie our shoes. We have to go, okay, let me think about this. It's just, now it is an entrenched neural pathway. We do it. It becomes a conditioned response that we can do without having to think about it. Driving is that, but it's the same for the animals. Now, I do understand and appreciate the argument of, there are people who just see positive reinforcement as a means to an end, their end. They want to get a flying lead change. They're not really worried about the horse's emotional capacity, or how do they feel about it? Was it clear? Did they get it? Did they like it? Do they feel good about it? All those pieces are not necessarily being thought of. We can do, and you guys have heard me say this a million times, positive reinforcement should not be all about the food. If it's all about the food, if it feels like it's all about the food, if there's a sense of entitlement, and that's anthropomorphic, I know, but if it has that kind of feel to it, it means we haven't looked at the big picture. This should be a holistic approach to training. It's not just about getting the thing trained so it serves us. We're trying to create all the things that go with it to create a horse who thrives, or a sea lion who thrives, or a dog who thrives, or whatever, a child who thrives, so that they're learning to have a balanced picture. But the same thing is true with our kids. We don't just say, I'm going to teach you to do this and I'm going to reinforce you every time you do it. It becomes, a big key is wanting to teach them to enjoy the game, to enjoy the processing. And there is so much that's going on beyond just getting the reinforcer. Reinforcers are happening all the time, whether we're aware of it or not. If behavior increases in frequency, something's reinforcing it. It's happening, whether it's wants to be defined as getting food, or it's because they explored the thing and their curiosity said, oh, it's just a paper, Murray was a classic one. He's like, oh, I don't know. And he's touching the target. Pretty soon he went past it and he just touched it. And you can see him go, it's nothing. It's an inanimate object. That to himself had value and was reinforcing in that capacity. So there's many reinforcers going on all the time. It is not this, I gave you a reinforcer. It's the only thing that is having behavior increase in frequency. All of these components are working together. So if you're only thinking about reinforcers and punishers, whether it's negative reinforcement or positive punishment, it's pressure or it's food or whatever it is, then you're doing a disservice to your horse and to yourself and to your relationship with your horse. If you're only thinking about letting them do whatever willy-nilly without helping them to learn how to learn in this environment, to feel safe in this environment, or to do the things that we need to do to help keep them safe, like we need to be able to say, we need to be able to do your feet when it's time to do them. We need to be able to give you medicine. Those are things that we need to teach them to do. Just like our children have to learn things that they don't necessarily want to do. If you left your kids to it, I don't even know all kids would want to learn how to read. You know what I mean? So we teach them, and then it becomes intrinsically reinforcing. And I think the big goal behind it is we're not just trying to teach the stuff. When we're doing positive reinforcement correctly, it is not all about the food. and it should not be all about the food. It is teaching them to be problem solvers, to enjoy problem solving, to embrace their curiosity, to be independent, to be confident, to feel safe in their world. It's a big picture, and this is one of the benefits that comes from the marine mammal training. All the marine mammals, they got at SeaWorld, they got all their food each and every day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. They got all their social interactions every single day, regardless of what they did or didn't do. So why'd they do it? Because they enjoyed playing the game. They enjoyed the environmental enrichment. Contra freeloading, that concept when animals are given free food and they can choose to have the food or ignore the food, they tend to ignore the food and go hit the lever to get the food. Why would they do that when there's free food there? There's an engagement that is happening beyond really maybe some of our comprehension, but there is engagement that is happening. Positive reinforcement can be used in that way to bring us along to building a deeper relationship with our animals, to have them confident and relaxed in their world. But I think one of the things we see a lot is people kind of forget about the relaxation, and we can get them almost addicted to the training. You can get them where they kind of feel manic, and that's not good for us. It's not good for them. You wouldn't want anyone to be like that. So building on that relaxation and slowing it down and not having it feel like you have to do this in order to get this. We have reinforcement coming all the time for other things or food, but reinforcement is coming in the sense of playing the game and the contra freeloading and enjoying that process. Also, with neuroscience, we're in neurobiology, we're learning that the seeking system, which is the thing that helps them find the things they want, the things they like, the things they desire, that process goes to producing things in their hormones and chemicals that help them to feel more excited, more well-grounded, whatever it might be. And so we need to be thoughtful in how we're applying the positive reinforcement. It's not all about the food. And if it feels like that, or if you think that's the case, you need to maybe pull it apart a little bit so you're working on that relaxation. You turn them into problem solvers. Do you know that they gave, there's a study they did where they gave mice, they blocked the dopamine receptors in their brains. And so now these little mice, you hate to even think about this whole process, but they're giving them, if they fed them, they would eat food. But food could be inches from them, and without the dopamine to drive the seeking to survive, they starved to death. I mean, it's inches from them. They can smell it, they can see it. But without the dopamine and the seeking process, they lost that drive and that need for survival. Learning and the seeking of the things they want, they need to survive is part of their survival techniques. It's how they learn to survive and to thrive in the world. So when we're using positive reinforcement in the form of food, or negative reinforcement in the form of pressure release or even punishment, well, there's a big onus on us. But I'm going to really specify and talk directly to the point of using food as a reinforcer. It is a big onus. It is a need that they have for food. So we can do positive reinforcement training, utilizing food and training in a non-ethical way. And I think, and this is what can create some of that kind of manic feeling, or what people have referred to as, robotic seeming or transactional, where they're just doing it to get the food. It shouldn't feel like that. If it feels like that, you're kind of missing a piece in it. It's not going to help your relationship, and it's not going to help your horse to be more independent and more of a problem-solving, engaged, well-rounded, emotionally balanced horse. So that's one of the things we want to do, is help people to get that piece right and understand what those differences are. But as that kind of conversation is going on around there, it's important we don't just try to fix the thing. If they have a bad, they're bucking under saddle, okay, well, first thing we got to do is consider the environment they're living in. We need to consider what physically can be going on, whether it's environmental, whether it's social and who they're living with, or whether it is that there is, a poor saddle fit or whatever it is. We must first try to figure out, if we can, what the source of the problem is, because all behavior does serve a purpose. So there is something going on behind it. So our job is then to look at the big picture and try to suss that out before we go trying to tackle behavior things first, and then to be thoughtful with the way that we utilize food and things that are resources that are primary reinforcers that they need to survive. So that's a little food for thought for today.